No, 1 second. Okay, I see why they need a filter on this. Oh, yeah. Hand it back. It's becoming a hip thing. So, yeah, we're about to get started, yes. We'll talk about how crack is destroying society. Yes, I know I was going to do a broadcast on roasting crack's agricultural aspirations. What happened to that? It's still in the works. So tonight, I thought I'd talk about some other aspects of crack's problem with society and the problem crack poses to society. And also, I thought I'd announce some other broadcasts that are coming. We're going to also critique crack's tractor driving from the perspective of an experienced heavy machinery operator, namely myself. And we're also going to talk about how crack is a failure at politics. And I'm also going to do a serious broadcast about basically, I'm going to talk about women in the trades, women in blue collar work or what have you. I guess that's enough. But I really got to get started. So we'll hold off on the pipe till the end. But I wanted to talk about this issue of crack. Seriously? No, I'm not losing. Yeah. This issue of crack because it occurred to me that there was a whole issue a few years ago in Michigan in which the FBI trapped or entrapped some individuals into basically pretending to be LARPing as a militia and convinced them to basically do nothing. And it was alleged that they were involved in a plot to kidnap and potentially murder the governor of Michigan, but it was all based on idle conversations directed by federal informants uh, who knew they were on tape or knew they were being taped or wiretapped or what have you, and led their victims to say certain things in idle conversation. This is why the Bible says, do not jest or joke. But in any case, these guys were a bunch of dummies and they managed to still get off of the charges, even though they were jailed or in prison for a while. That the whole operation was so bogus that in time they actually, were freed, and it became, well known that the FBI had basically entrapped these individuals. And so my question is, when all this was going on, where was Prack? Now we all know the answer to that. Prack was posting on the fora and really doing not much else, because when Prack goes outside, he has to make a video of it. So we can basically tell every time he's been outside for the last year. And it's been about 80 times or so forth or so on. He's not been outside a whole lot. And one would conjecture that in, the last 7 or 8 years, he's not been outside a lot more than he was before, in years past last year. So there's not been many more cases of him. There's no documented proof that he's been outside to any great extent in these preceding years, and so consequently, we know where Prax's whereabouts were basically. Now, what I want to know is why does an individual like Pratt put himself out there as the world's greatest gunsmith and the world's foremost authority on firearms, and undoubtedly posts on a lot of firearms related boards and a lot of militia boards and what have you, maybe not posts, but lurks. And then he allows these guys in Michigan to be taken advantage of by the FBI. Now, what this tells me as an individual who does not take chances is that the FBI must have co opted Pratt. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I have to assume from the perspective of a dissident that Pratt is working for the FBI. Now, that could be incorrect. That could be as far from the truth as you know we might imagine. I mean, the FBI is not in the habit of recruiting, Polacks who've been sitting on their ass for the last 10 years. We joke about Pratt collecting a check, and I think what happened was that he invalided out of work about 10 years ago or longer, and he only got his pension at a later date. He didn't retire at once. He got his retirement later because he basically was able to get out claiming that he was an invalid, but he's not too much of an invalid to hunt deer from the comfort of his mobility scooter. So it's very interesting. So yeah, chances are Pratt's not a Fed. Obviously I have to assume he is a Fed, but chances are he's not a Fed. So that being the case, why does Pratt not use his influence and sagacity and wisdom to dissuade these young men wanting to involve themselves in military weapons and militias and so forth and so on from engaging in these activities? It's not hard. I mean, I've been doing it for years. I've done it with forons in person. I said, these guns are, it's not a big deal. You need to not be dwelling on guns. Basically, guns are toys. The only way you could have a successful partisan operation in the United States would be with large quantities of drones and RPG launchers being shipped from some uh, foreign country, namely Russia. We could carry on a successful dissident operation or dissident campaign, assuming we had a never-ending supply of cheap drones and RPG launchers and RPGs, obviously. But otherwise, small arms are, they say, oh, well, you know, everybody knows. Well, a lot of these younger people probably don't know the whole parable of the Liberator. Was it General Motors made this pistol called the Liberator? And, this is why I don't take small arms seriously as a whole, but it's also why you need small arms. The Liberator was a pistol they dropped en masse around France during World War II. And the idea was that the partisans could take this pistol that was made by General Motors, and it was just a cheap single action or single shot, whatever, pistol, and they could shoot a German soldier and take his weapons with this Liberator pistol, which wasn't very good. But if they could take a German soldier or sentry off guard, then they could avail themselves of his weapons and gear and so forth, and then they could work their way up to taking a machine gun for the purposes of resistance or what have you, the imaginary resistance for the most part. But at the end of the day, the point of the matter is that this is the reason you want a gun, so you could take some military hardware from a soldier and better serve your purposes. You could also use an axe or something like that. A gun's more technologically sound and more it increases your chances of pulling it off successfully. But you could do the same with an axe. And so the point of the matter is, did I say that already? Yeah, I did. Oh, that's not good. We have Pratt. Pratt's supposed to be an elder statesman. Pratt wants to be treated as an elder statesman. He's like Macrobius. Mac wants to be an elder statesman so bad because he can't be the elder statesman in his own family. That's the sad part about Macrobius. He can't be the patriarch. He longs to be the patriarch in his own family, and people think, "Oh, you're too hard on Macrobius." You have to realize what a pernicious influence Macrobius is on society. Why don't we do a sound check real quick, if you don't mind? Macrobius is a massively pernicious influence on his own side. Macrobius is basically leukemia. That should be his name. Obvious, awesome. What did old Apollonian used to call him? I don't remember, but it's not important. But macrobiotic or something like that. But the bottom line is that Macrobius is dangerous because he will make a case for the fact that owning or claiming grand dogs is trad. It's okay to have grand dogs, and that's very trad actually, and that he will lay a whole historical precedent for having grand dogs. And this is why I fundamentally don't trust or like Macrobius, because I recognize that he is a dangerous heretic. And it's similarly with Prack, only Prack can hardly hold a conversation. And people think this is a new phenomenon, but he could hardly hold a conversation long before he had a stroke. 10 years before he had his stroke, Prack could hardly hold a conversation. Prack thought the best way of winning an argument was to stick nigger the guy you were arguing with. That is, basically diminish him to such an extent that he would throw a tantrum and no longer be able to carry on the argument. But he very much was not a man who could use words proficiently. He was not a very good, he didn't have a good mouthpiece, as they say in Detroit. Maybe that was from years of having to work with blacks, keep his mouth shut. He'd be wanting to say nigger and sig heil so bad and he couldn't pull it off. And then he runs away from, Detroit. Today you could probably take a small black child and that black child could chase Prack. That black child, can you imagine Prack answering the door and there's a small black kid there for Halloween and Pratt keels over from a heart attack while his hand is dropping for his pistol that he carries inside the house. He has a house carry pistol, he carries around the house in his pajamas. And so this would probably happen under the circumstance. But getting back to the issue, and this is just one issue I'm particularly fixating on right now, is the issue of these poor militiamen who were deprived of Prax's counsel because he simply didn't want to do anything. And so these guys go to jail, they suffer everything from their ignorance and stupidity because they don't have a wise leader like Prack or a wise counselor like Prack. And we see this in general with the older generation. They complain about the younger generation. But remember, who brought up the younger generation? You did. And even now, you refuse to take responsibility or insist in fixing anything. And this is the really damning aspect of the Prax generation. We're talking about Generation X. For a long time, for way too long. I remember back in the 90s, it would be like people would be talking about how the boomers were the greatest generation. Oh, we experienced so much. We had so much fun. We did all these cool things. We got to see the first man on the moon and all this nonsense. And, we tried marijuana and cocaine. Marijuana in the 70s and cocaine in the 80s. It was awesome. We're such a blessed generation. And then Generation X comes along, which it's amazing that they raise their hand, they raise their face, they raise their head. You should keep your head bowed indefinitely if you're part of Generation X. But imagine those few individuals from Generation X who basically came along immediately after the boomers come up, and they want to talk about glorify their past, their exciting lives that they live, which is a complete joke. you know but nevertheless, when they want to when somebody offers them responsibility, they shirk it, they run from it. They've done this their whole lives. They've done this their whole lives. This is why you know autism and retardation and homosexuality are rampant in the children born post 2000. It's Generation X. They're to blame. This is what they created. They created the millennials. They literally created the millennials from scratch. And this is the problem. This is the problem. Now, I don't know whether Track has been able to have kids. I'm going to hope not, but he is an example of his generation. He is the epitome of his generation. And consequently, he must bear some of the burden, some of the blame for what has gone wrong. People who are cognizant of the situation as it is today, people who are knowledgeable and have had a lot of information that's come their way, should be able to understand the gravity of the situation politically, socially, economically, and so forth and so on, and be willing to lend a hand to repair the situation, but not Brack. Brack is fully aware of the situation, but he doesn't want to do anything about it. Brack just wants to enjoy life and stay away from black people. And that's all Brack cares about, taking advantage of everybody's kindness and decency in his life while showing no kindness and decency to anybody else in the world, not even people of a similar ideological bent. So Prack sees these guys in Michigan being basically railroaded by the FBI. Even before they're railroaded, they're being led like lambs to the slaughter by the FBI. Does Prack intervene? No, Prack does nothing. Prack just absolutely does nothing. He allows these people to be railroaded, take lambs to the slaughter. Even though he understands what is going on, he understands the nature of the situation, and even so, he refuses to do anything. So this is an example of how his generation is, and this is why this generation must be stamped out along with every other generation in the immediate past or future, because this is the kind of individuals they are. And while they may not be a burden per se on society, though I think Frack is, they are a burden on everybody else because they believe that they don't owe anybody anything, regardless of their background or their economics, situation or what have you. They really believe that they don't owe anybody anything, and in fact, they may be owed something or other from society. So this is the problem, and I'm using this one example of Pratt refusing to help anybody in Michigan and refusing to do anything to further what he says he believes in. Instead, he's just living his miserable life, catching a few fish and hunting for deer tracks without ever seeing a deer, ever, and wandering around on his mobility scooter in the middle of the Michigan woods. And the reality of the situation is he has given up on life. Everything seems quite meaningless to him. And, this is why he is so dour and monosyllabic and, in general, unhappy and this is where the true National Socialist effort should come in. He should be devoting his life, if not his resources, to the ends of a wholesome party operation, which would enable him to have a decent post when it basically got elected to office. But no, he's not going for any of that. He is going for the bottom of the barrel all the way along. And it's unethical, and we will see how it shakes out. But I can already tell you how it will shake out. It will shake out badly. But Pratt thinks he can get away from this unscathed. He's done this so far. He's escaped unscathed from every situation he's been up till now, where he's going to find his position to be inextricable. He's going to find the ability to accomplish something has been entirely eradicated. And he will find that life is no longer what it once was, where, you know, 15 years of sitting on his fat ass. And, there's more to life than being disabled. But let's say the disabled check was 850. It makes no difference. The reality is that one must understand how dangerous this man is to society. And the only answer to this problem, and the only answer to my question tonight, is the posts that have been placed on the site, on the fora, and the responses to them. And people can judge for themselves what the situation is. And, following Prax's career long enough, you will see what a horrible influence he has been, or he's had just simply a disinclination to exercise any influence unless it is one from a clandestine point of view, in other words, stick nearing people. But he's been around so many people, and he could have accomplished so much, but he refused to live his life in such a way as to benefit the large majority of the people he claims to be on the same side of. And that is the basis for this broadcast in its entirety. Now, again, I'd like to say we're going to be doing a broadcast roasting Prax gardening. We're going to do a broadcast roasting Prax tractor driving. And I want to do a broadcast on a Tale of Two Cities. Was it?
Okay. Tell us who it is.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
Maybe it was a Tale of Two Cities. But anyway, it'll be a Tale of Two Cities. And oh yeah, I'm going to do a broadcast analyzing women in the trades, and we'll be also talking about how Prac has been enabling women and slowing down society so he can feel more at home in a feminine society where the pace is not rapid, because that way he doesn't have to keep pace with the younger men. And so it's a very popular situation for him. So without any more elaboration, I intend to close this broadcast immediately. We will be doing these other broadcasts. We got some good roasts coming up, but tonight I wanted to delve into an example of the exact situation or the exact precedent for my contention that Prac is in fact up to no good.